The person who looks richest in the parking lot might be making payments on almost everything you can see: the new car, the expensive phone, maybe even the watch. Meanwhile, the actual millionaire could be the person two spots over driving a completely normal car and carrying a 3-year-old phone. That's what makes quiet wealth so hard to recognize. The biggest differences usually aren't visible. They're hiding inside a bunch of boring looking decisions that happen every single day. And these are not 10 magical habits that every millionaire follows before breakfast. No cold showers, no waking up at 4:37 a.m. to read biographies of CEOs. These are simply 10 decision rules that make wealth easier to build and a lot harder to accidentally destroy. The first one is probably the reason so many people with good income still don't feel rich. They're watching the wrong scoreboard. Imagine two people. One makes $120,000 a year, drives a brand new SUV, has the nicer apartment, and upgrades basically everything the moment he can afford the payment. The other earns less, drives an ordinary car, and looks much less impressive. But the first person owes money on almost everything, while the second has cash, investments, and very little consumer debt. Who's actually richer? Income tells you how much money flows through your life. Net worth tells you how much of it you've actually managed to keep. That changes the way you look at a raise. Say your take-home pay goes up by $600 a month. Nice. But then $350 becomes a new car payment, $100 disappears into a slightly more expensive apartment, and the remaining $150 quietly becomes extra spending. Your income went up, your financial position barely moved. So one useful thing you can do today is get a rough starting number: cash, savings, investments, major assets, minus the debt you owe. Not to judge yourself, just to finally know which scoreboard you're playing on. And if you want money explained like this, connected to your paycheck and your actual life instead of buried under finance speak, that's what this channel is for. The second thing quiet millionaires tend to protect is something I'd call the gap. Say you take home $4,000 a month and $3,500 is already committed before you get to make many choices. Rent, insurance, car payment, student loan, phone bill, minimum payments, whatever. Technically, $4,000 hit your account. But the part of that paycheck you actually control is closer to $500. That $500 is your breathing room. And this is where wealth either gets room to grow or gets slowly squeezed out. Every time you add another permanent expense, that gap gets smaller. Another $80 here, $140 there, a nicer car, a new financing plan, a more expensive apartment. None of those decisions has to be crazy by itself. The problem is that eventually your whole paycheck has a job before it even arrives. So instead of obsessing over whether you bought coffee twice this week, calculate the bigger number. Take home pay minus your committed monthly expenses. That's your current gap. If you make $4,000 and $3,500 is spoken for, you have $500 of real flexibility. Protecting that number matters a lot more than winning a moral victory over a $6 latte. The third difference shows up when income increases. A raise feels like extra money, so naturally your brain starts giving it assignments. Better apartment, better car, more dinners out, maybe the streaming service with no ads, because apparently sitting through a 20-second commercial has finally become beneath you. And there's nothing wrong with enjoying a raise. The mistake is waiting until after the money arrives to decide what all of it means. A quiet wealth rule is to decide in advance. Maybe your take-home pay goes up $500 a month. You could say, I'm using $200 to make life better now, and $300 is permanently going towards savings or investments. The exact split isn't the point. The point is that some of the raise improves today, while some of it improves your future. Otherwise, raises have a weird habit of developing new plans for themselves. That leads directly into the fourth difference. They pay more attention to recurring costs than tiny purchases. A one-time $200 purchase is $200. A new $200 monthly commitment is $2,400 every year until you change it. That's why a car upgrade, higher insurance premium, finance device, premium phone plan, or more expensive rent can quietly matter much more than the random small purchases people love to feel guilty about. Open your bank or credit card app and look at the last month. Don't hunt for 20 tiny transactions so you can emotionally prosecute yourself for buying lunch. Find your 3 biggest recurring commitments. Those are the expenses that deserve the most attention because they don't just cost you once. They keep showing up, smiling every 30 days. And this is where the fifth rule becomes important because recurring costs often get disguised as something much smaller: the monthly payment. You've seen it everywhere. Only $89 a month. Suddenly, a phone, a laptop, a piece of furniture, or an upgrade looks completely reasonable because your brain isn't looking at the actual purchase anymore. It's comparing $89 to your paycheck. But can I make this payment? And is this a good purchase for me? Are two completely different questions. Before financing something, look at the full amount you're committing to, how long you'll be paying it, any interest involved, and how much monthly space it permanently takes away while the payment exists. A monthly payment is a tiny number attached to a much bigger commitment. Two people can buy the exact same car and make completely different financial decisions. One sees $540 a month and thinks, yeah, I can technically make that work. The other asks, what's the total price? How much does this lock up every month? And what else am I giving up to carry this for the next few years? Same car, same payment, different question. The sixth difference is almost funny because it involves making modern life slightly less convenient on purpose. Buying things has become incredibly frictionless. Your card is saved, the shipping address is saved, the app knows your size. One tap and a package begins its spiritual journey towards your front door. Quiet wealth sometimes means putting a little friction back into that process. Not because impulse buying makes you a bad person, because wanting something and buying something are two different moments, and separating them gives your brain time to catch up. If you see a $180 non-essential item online, save it instead of checking out immediately. Come back tomorrow. If you still want it, it fits your plan, and you can comfortably afford it. Buy it. The goal isn't deprivation. The goal is making sure one emotional moment doesn't get permanent access to your bank account. You can even create your own threshold. Maybe anything non-essential over $100 doesn't get purchased in the same session you discover it. Your number could be higher or lower. What matters is that the rule exists before the temptation does. The seventh difference is that quiet wealth usually cares more about value than visibility. That does not mean wealthy people never buy expensive things. Some absolutely do. The difference is whether the expense makes their actual life better or mostly makes their life look more expensive to other people. Someone might happily spend $1,500 on a laptop they use 8 hours a day for work, or pay more for a mattress they'll sleep on every night for the next several years. At the same time, they might have very little interest in spending another $15,000 on a car package whose biggest feature is that strangers at red lights can tell they spent another $15,000. One of the best filters here is almost stupidly simple. Would I still want this if nobody else ever saw it? If the answer is yes, great. You might genuinely value it. If the desire drops by 70% the moment the imaginary audience disappears, that tells you something. Quiet wealth isn't about buying the cheapest version of everything. It's about making sure your money is improving your life instead of financing the appearance of your life. But protecting money and making better purchases still isn't enough. Eventually, the money you didn't spend needs somewhere to go. Otherwise, it just sits in check-in for 3 weeks until Target, DoorDash, Amazon, or your future self comes up with a very convincing reason to adopt it. That's why the eighth difference is automation. A lot of people plan to save whatever is left at the end of the month. The problem is that money left in the main spending account has a remarkable ability to find employment, so quiet wealth flips the order. Payday happens, a predetermined amount moves automatically towards savings, retirement, or long-term investing, and then normal life continues with what remains. This isn't about having superhuman discipline. It's almost the opposite. Automation means you need discipline fewer times. Instead of making the same good decision 12 or 24 times a year, you make it once and let the system keep repeating it. Even if the amount feels small, changing the order matters. Future you stops getting whatever happens to survive the month. The ninth difference looks less exciting because sometimes wealthy money is doing absolutely nothing. It's just sitting there as cash. And that can feel inefficient until Tuesday afternoon when your car makes a sound that can only be described as financially threatening. Say the repair is $900. If you have no buffer, that repair may go onto a credit card. Now the original problem becomes a balance, interest, and another monthly obligation. Then the next emergency arrives while you're still paying for the last one. If you have cash set aside, the repair still sucks, but it stays a $900 problem instead of starting a 6-month side quest. You also don't have to begin by hearing save 6 months of expenses and immediately closing the bank app out of self-defense. Start with a more concrete target. What's the kind of emergency that could realistically hit your life? A deductible, a car repair, an emergency flight, 1 month of essential bills. Build enough cash to handle one likely problem, then make the buffer stronger from there. This isn't just about getting richer, it's about becoming harder to knock over. And the 10th difference is probably the biggest mental shift of all. Eventually, money stops being measured only by what it can buy and starts being measured by what it lets you say no to. $10,000 could become part of a nicer car down payment. Or it could mean you can leave a terrible job without accepting the first offer you get. It could help you survive a layoff, move to another city, avoid emergency debt, or wait for a better opportunity. And that's why a useful number isn't just the balance in your savings account, it's your runway. Take liquid savings and compare it with what your essential life costs each month. If you have $9,000 available and your basic expenses are around $3,000 a month, that's roughly 3 months of runway. Now that $9,000 isn't just a number sitting in an app, it represents about 3 months during which money gives you choices. And that's really why quiet wealth can look so boring from the outside. You don't see someone's lower monthly obligations. You don't see the emergency they handled without debt. You don't see the raise that quietly increased their investments instead of their car payment. You don't see the job they were able to walk away from because they had 6 months of breathing room. Looking rich spends money. Being rich keeps options. So don't try to copy all 10 of these tomorrow morning. Start with 3 things. Calculate the gap between your take-home pay and your committed monthly expenses. Find the biggest recurring expense that's shrinking that gap. Then automate one piece of your next paycheck towards something you own instead of something you owe. Because real wealth usually doesn't announce itself in the parking lot. It shows up quietly in your bank account, your obligations, and your ability to make decisions without panic. Eventually, money stops being about how much you can buy. Real wealth is when money starts buying you the ability to say no.